Yes, first of all, let me ask. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you. And
Okay.
I think the attendees confirm. Okay.
Yeah, I see some
That's great.
confirmations. And can you and everybody see my slide?
Slides are perfect. I can. Okay, again. Kristina, let me
Okay.
say more that if you have answers, you can write in the Q&A section, and then we will answer to all the questions at the end of this presentation. Thank
Okay,
you.
sounds good. No problem. Okay, then if everything's set, I can start. Good morning, everybody from Boston. Good afternoon and good evening for those of you that are in different time zones, including the Central European time zone. Thank you once again to the European Forensic Institute and Sam Steiner from the European Association of Crime Analysts for facilitating this discussion today. I'm really happy to be here and to share my experiences overseas, both professional and academic. Before kicking it off, I would like to give a little bit of background about myself. My name is Kristina Angelevska. I'm originally from North Macedonia, Western Balkans, and I'm in the final stages of wrapping up my master's in conflict resolution at the University of Massachusetts in Boston as a recipient of the Fulbright Scholarship. Today's discussion will be largely based on not just my academic, but incorporation of my professional experience in Boston. Last year, I have had the opportunity to complete a government internship with the state of Massachusetts, more specifically the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, and I was working primarily with the Office of Grants and Research. That's a government donor organization that is distributing funding to law enforcement and nonprofit organizations, primarily in the domain of criminal justice, law enforcement, and basically enhancing police policy reforms in the state of Massachusetts. Besides working with the Office of Grants and Research, I have had the opportunity to conduct numerous, myself and my fellow colleagues from the internship program, we have had the opportunity to conduct numerous site visits in other government agencies that are under the umbrella of the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, including the Municipal Police Training Committee. And I have had the opportunity, I was actually given the opportunity to observe some classes of the entry-level Police Academy at the Randolph Police Academy and one class in Linfield, Massachusetts. And that pretty much inspired me to complete my final capstone project, which is something similar like a master's thesis, but it's a little bit more concise and concrete. And I was very much inspired to work on this topic in the domain of policing and law enforcement because my internship program was heavily based on the domain of criminal justice. And me, as someone coming from Southeastern Europe and from the Western Balkans, I realized that it's a great idea to see how certain policies, rules and regulations and training and curriculums are being implemented in an advanced and progressive society like the state of Massachusetts, because in my opinion, in order to establish democratic governance and just make sure that the pillars of democracy like transparency, accountability, and participatory decision-making are inclusively exercised in the society, one really has to go back to some of the basic layers of international peace and security landscape, and that is the police, because law enforcement officials are the ones who deal with a plethora of daily challenges and activities on a day-to-day basis with citizens. With no further ado, the topic of my discussion today is assessment. Basically, I was analyzing the training curriculum for recruit police officers through conflict resolution because I'm studying conflict resolution and the 2020 police reforms in the state of Massachusetts. For those of you that might be familiar with the criminal justice reforms in Massachusetts, this is just the 2020 police reforms. I'm not looking into the 2015 police reforms in the state, just the ones that were established in 2020. Before jumping into the research findings and a little bit in more details about the topic, I would like to give a little bit of a research background of the topic. So as I said, police, law enforcement really play a key role in preserving public safety in the society. And those are the ones that people, you would see a police officer on the street. If you are unfamiliar with something, you visit a place for the first time, one should feel comfortable and approach them and ask them for questions, regardless if it's about safety and security, but just random questions about directions or a restaurant, etc. However, a negative image has been fueling in the US throughout history, especially about law enforcement's behavior with people of color in the United States. And that happened particularly after the murder of George Floyd a couple of years ago in Minnesota, Minneapolis. Even though there were numerous cases of police inappropriate behavior over the years, I feel like that the murder of George Floyd reached the peak of people's patience with this matter, and it infuriated the society and resulted basically in conflict escalation between people and the police in the US. It led to the massive movement, Black Lives Matter. And this particular circumstance led to deeper polarization, to deeper social division in the society. And it definitely led to lack of trust in the police, especially to lack of trust in law enforcement trainings. People were like, how are these police officers to be trained if they're trained to act like this with a plethora of social identities in the society? Then that means everything starts from the inception phase. And that is why a progressive and advanced society like the state of Massachusetts on the Northeast coast in the United States introduced a set of police reforms in 2020, right after the murder of George Floyd, basically a new act of police reforms that was passed on December 1st, 2020, with the aim of ensuring racial equity in the state, social justice, but also accountability of law enforcement in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What does that mean? That meant that these reforms have been also considerably reflected in the recruit officer course of the Municipal Police Training Committee. Basically, the Municipal Police Training Committee, it's an agency in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that is running this recruit officer course for municipal police departments in the state. Those reforms also included changes in de-escalation tactics and the use of force by forthcoming police officers. And also, it included the use of the body-worn cameras in the training component of the police recruits within the Municipal Police Training Committee. These are some of the conflict frameworks that I decided to incorporate and see how they can be further utilized alongside the 2020 police reforms in the recruit officer course curriculum. My research goal basically in this paper is to discuss the implementation of this newly established police standards in this training curriculum through models of conflict resolution, with the aim of understanding the factors that very much contribute to inappropriate police behavior, like polarization that leads inevitably to stereotypes and prejudices that are very much inflicted in the society. And also finally, to analyze the ROC curriculum through the cross-dimensional lenses of conflict resolution and policing. So as I mentioned, these are some of the conflict frameworks, basically conflict methods that are very much utilized in the domain of conflict resolution that I decided to introduce in this paper. And those are polarization. And I mentioned polarization as the first one because from my perspective, polarization, that is the social division in the society, very much contributes to stereotypes, to characterization of people, of us versus them. And it can significantly lead to destructive escalation and reaching the point of limiting escalation and de-escalation when polarization is omnipresent can be very much challenging for law enforcement. Some of the methods and methodology I've been using, mostly because it's a capstone paper, it's not a master thesis. I was doing mostly secondary source research from government materials. Mostly I was using secondary source research from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. For example, the curriculum that's available online for the Recruit Officer Police Academy, but also I was doing field observations, as I mentioned at the very beginning, inspired by my internship with EOPS, by my work with the Office of Grants and Research, the body-worn camera program that is distributed to law enforcement agencies throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and observations of the classes of the entry-level police academy, both in Randolph and in Lynnfield, Massachusetts. I mentioned in the previous slide about polarization. I think it's useful to see what is polarization all about, basically the polarization that I'm talking about in this capstone paper. It's basically a concept of division into significantly different groups or sets of opinions or beliefs. I think that something should be yellow, but Andreas might think that it should be white. So we have significantly different opinions about something, and that can lead very much to stereotypes and prejudices in the society. And that's why mapping the polarities, it's crucially important, especially in such a sensitive domain like the peace and security industry, where law enforcement play a key role in preserving public safety and security in the society. Polarity mapping is a concept that I was introduced at the Geneva Center for Security Policy while completing a fellowship in foreign and security policy a couple of years ago, before moving to the United States. Polarity mapping, for those of you that are not familiar, it has been established in the United States by an organization called Polarity Partnerships, has been introduced by the founder of Polarity Partnership, Barry Johnson. They do a plethora, a variety of courses related to polarity mapping with organizations, including law enforcement too. They incorporate conflict resolution skills, police and community relations. Just briefly, a little bit of background about how does polarity mapping work and how I was introduced with it through the course, through the executive education coursework at the GCSP. Like, for example, this concept is widely used in a variety of courses at the GCSP, including their oldest flagship course, Leadership and International Security, where they work with a variety of business security practitioners. So they discuss the early warnings, like, for example, of polarization. What are the fears? Like, for example, at the bottom here, where it says fears, they would discuss about, for example, the way I would approach it, like, what are the fears of the community and society of law enforcement? What are the fears of law enforcement when it comes to crime control with citizens in the society in general? What are the early warnings that lead to those fears? And here, where it says values, what are the action steps that we can take mutually together, collaboratively, not to completely diminish these issues in the society, but I would say to significantly reduce them. Because before building trust, in my opinion, between the police and the community, establishing a spectrum of understanding about the differences that lead to polarization and that infuriate these stereotypes about the police and the citizens is just something that we have to first look into before saying, okay, let's use a tool to enhance trust between the police and the society. But before jumping into the research findings, the thorough research findings and my observations of the recruit officer curriculum, I just thought that it's a really great idea to provide a little bit of a historical background of policing in the United States, because it clarifies the roots of police violence in the country and the persistence in present times, and just to talk about how did actually polarization in policing start and led, unfortunately, to some instances of police inappropriate behavior in the country. How policing started in the United States, it was basically a non-formal community-oriented night watch, which was very much a replication of the pillars of policing that were established in the United Kingdom, specifically in England, by Sir Robert Peel. The night watch system, it was comprised of volunteers with the aim of alerting the community of imminent danger. It was established first in Boston, in Massachusetts, then in New York City, and then in the city of Philadelphia on the northeast coast of the country. But the night watch method was not an effective crime control mechanism because volunteers would not perform duties assigned. They were not sworn in law enforcement officers. They would join the night watch, established system just to avoid military service. They would oftentimes like sleep on duties or consume alcohol. So that is why in 1833 in Philadelphia, the day watch system was established, followed by New York City. Finally, The idea of centralized municipal police departments started in the 1830s. Again, firstly established in Boston, then in Chicago, and then in the city of New York. But unlike policing on the Northeast coast, night watch, day watch, and then this idea of centralized municipal police departments with sworn in law enforcement officers to protect the citizens, help them out about different matters, policing in the southern states took a considerably different approach. What was basically different from policing in the Northeast countries? It was known as the slave patrol. This slave patrol was deeply rooted in the modern police departments in the South states of the United States. Basically, based on my secondary research findings, it was used to keep discipline for enslaved workers or a means of control for laborers. Those are formerly enslaved people working in the agricultural system in the country. And it very much led to the enforcement of the so-called Jim Crow laws that were originally established to deny formerly enslaved individuals of equal opportunities and access to the political system in the country. And all the historical background, basically, of policing in the United States and thinking about polarization, the stereotypes, conflict escalation, and how difficult it is to de-escalate a situation, even in an advanced and progressive state like Massachusetts is, for example, in New England of the US, without just going back to see the root of this issue, how everything started, it wouldn't have made a lot of sense for me and my findings. And that's why I wanted to give you a little bit of a background before going into the research findings. How are actually recruit police officers nowadays in present times trained in Massachusetts, considering all these social barriers and divisions caused basically by this issue of polarization with the slave patrol in the southern states of the US. With no further ado, let me just move this over here, sorry. Just to provide a little bit of a background, how the recruit officer course is designed, the structure of its curriculum. It's organized in 120 learning objectives that are assembled in lesson topics. They're organized in 3 volumes. So when entry-level recruit officers are accepted into the police academy, volume 1, they first learn about policing in Massachusetts, and then volume 2, they learn about investigations, and volume 3, it's about patrol procedures. I have had the opportunity to observe classes from all of the 3 volumes of the recruit officer course. And the core of the core, actually the core value, the goal of the ROC curriculum is police are part of the community, not apart from it. So that's something that they first learn about in the ROC course. The goal is to dismantle the narrative, us versus them, meaning us, law enforcement, the police versus them, the citizens and people in the society that are deeply rooted in the historical policing exercised in the southern states of the United States. Just also to emphasize, the recruit officer course takes about 6 months to be completed, and that is different from the courses that the Massachusetts Police Academy are taking. The state troopers, that is a different level. That is something I wasn't looking into. I was looking into only the municipal police training. Yes. Now the findings for volume 1, just briefly, what I was able to notice and to summarize here, some of the subtopics that are covered in the volume 1, policing in Massachusetts. So they learn a variety of problem solving skills, communication skills. They go through scenarios, how to navigate problems with citizens in the society. And this very much includes different mediation skills in the sense of not the police officers being the one who provide the solution, but just navigating people in different situations to come to a solution together. I also could notice that there are no explicit changes suggested in the 2020 police reforms when it comes to volume 1. The content is yet connected, in my opinion, very much to the conflict frameworks of polarization, stereotypes, characterization and also destructive escalation, because I think that officers really should practice scenarios of implicit biases and stereotypes that are very much infuriated and inspired and fueled by polarization, where the social barrier of us versus them is omnipresent. We don't see them as someone who's friendly. And it's very much important in volume 1, in my opinion, police officers to be familiarized with something that is called attribute-based distortion. That is when, for instance, law enforcement officers demonstrate very friendly behavior, very supportive behavior, and that by the general community may be perceived as something purely coincidental, just like this situation on this picture over here. Also, yes, for example, last summer, as I mentioned at the Linfield Police Academy, the executive director of the Municipal Police Training Committee, Chief Robert J. Ferrulo, gave us the opportunity, among other observations at the police academy, to observe a negotiations class at the Linfield Police Academy. A negotiations class that was taught to the entry-level police officers. And I think really including this conflict frameworks in negotiations classes, it's a huge benefit for officers to practice scenarios, again, of implicit biases and just bridge the gap of us versus them. That is, talk about the really historically selective perception of individuals, like you're the good ones in the society, good cops, bad cops, socially inferior social identities in the society versus socially superior ones, like you are considered privileged, but you're not considered privileged in the society based on various circumstances. And that very much leads to frustration of people and deeply infuriates the polarization I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation. Volume 2, it's about investigations, like police officers to be learn different techniques, covered topics of investigations, and this volume basically prepares recruit officers to meticulously complete an investigation, which is a crucial skill for an upcoming police officers. These investigations include learning skills, how to navigate investigations for operating under influence, OUI, speeding measurement, motor vehicle investigations, and motor vehicle stops. Something that I haven't had the chance to include in the slides, but I just thought of, sharing with you in general. When I was observing the motor vehicle investigations last fall as part of volume 2 of the Randolph Police Academy, I also noticed while recruit police officers were training, they were doing different scenarios at a certain facility in Massachusetts and trained with volunteers how to navigate these different types of investigations. I noticed that volume 1 and volume 2 are so very much cross-dimensionally connected because they very much have to utilize negotiation skills, mediation skills, problem-solving skills, communication skills while working with a plethora of people when it comes to this kind of issues, not just for highway safety in the society, but this is just about general safety of both police officers and citizens in the community. So they very much interact. The training that they gain in volume 1 very much prepares them for the next stage of volume 2. Here in volume 2, the use of the body-worn cameras in Massachusetts is very much omnipresent. Before talking about how they use the body-worn cameras, I would like to just provide an overview of the use of body-worn cameras in Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts created the Law Enforcement Body-Worn Camera Task Force. It was designed with the aim of building trust between the police and the community and to serve as a de-escalation tool in situations that can easily escalate. But I will also add here, just go back to the polarity mapping tool. Finding and understanding, reaching an understanding about the differences that we hold in the society from a law enforcement perspective and citizens' perspective is a first step before building trust between the police and the community. There has been a great interest from municipal police departments about grant funding from the Office of Grants and Research. I personally was involved in the grant review process of very many applications, not just about the body-worn camera program, but I was also reviewing a plethora of other programs and a variety of applications that were submitted by law enforcement, police departments, and non-governmental organizations in the domain of criminal justice. And my perspective is that indeed, lately there has been a huge interest from municipal police departments to purchase body-worn cameras and provide trainings for their officers to use them in the state. Just in 2023, for example, $3.6 million were awarded to 52 municipal police departments through ODR grant funding in the state of Massachusetts. And I'll quote here the deputy governor of the state of Massachusetts, Kimberly Driscoll. She said, body-worn cameras are really a transformative tool that promote police transparency and accountability, enhance police trust, and positively impact the quality of the investigations. And that's why they're also used in the investigations procedures when police officers practice the different types of investigations I was just talking about. However, there are different perspectives on the body-worn cameras program. When they were first introduced, not just, let's say, just, I will talk about the United States in general. There have been very many debates in the US about the impact of the body-worn camera within law enforcement settings. For example, police unions in the US were very much caught off guard because it's not just to use the camera and just put it on a uniform of a police officer. There are a lot of rules, protocols, and trainings that police department has to follow, individuals that have to be involved in the utilization of the program itself, because it's always very much about sensitive information shown on the body-worn camera. Witnesses are exposed on camera, and that's not oftentimes in general something that's very comfortable for them. But also, on the other hand, this is based on a personal conversation I have had with a crime analyst at the Massachusetts Association, at the annual conference of the Massachusetts Association for Crime Analysts, MACA, last fall on the Cape in Massachusetts. She said body-worn cameras are really a huge contributor to ethical operations, and they are tools that are really providing better understanding about what really happened during a police operation. So they can be very, very useful as well, especially about enhancing transparency and accountability on behalf of law enforcement towards citizens. The findings for volume 3 of the recruit officer course are about patrol procedures. So this very much covers subject matters that are covered by uniform patrol officers. The subtopics are, they learn about different handcuffing techniques, they learn about different defense tactics, and most importantly, the use of weapons, that is the use of pepper spray and the use of baton, when to use them, how to use them, and when they're necessary. These topics, I just realized that while I was working on the capstone paper and just analyzing my research findings and compiling my notes, that are very much interconnected to the conflict framework of limiting escalation and de-escalation. So here are just some examples of different defense tactics, different handcuffing tactics that police officers learn about during training, the use of baton and the use of pepper spray. These are some quotes from personal conversations during my observations at the ROC course with one of the instructors about the use of pepper spray and baton at mass gatherings. So, for example, they said this was just part of their regular class activities. The instructor said, when encountering a violent group at mass gatherings and protests, the least harmful weapon to use is the pepper spray, since it is a pain compliance and useful de-escalation technique. Also, they added, when encountering with individuals, especially youth, as at mass gatherings, using the pepper spray to de-escalate a violent and aggressive behavior is a very more ethical thing to do, unlike the use of physical force or a baton for a situation that can easily be de-escalated with the least harmful weapon. And finally, some key takeaways and recommendations. Based on my research findings and the historical background of policing and how polarization can, if not treated, can deeply and further infuriates the public when it comes to public safety matters, integrating some of the concepts of the conflict frameworks, especially polarization and stereotypes and characterization frames, and just being aware of these challenges in the entry-level police academy curriculum of the recruit officer course, it's crucially important because police officers should be aware of the different perspectives people hold in the society, that is the different poles, stereotypes, prejudices that construct the characterization frames, and therefore lead towards the narrative of us in the community versus them, the police. Another key component, which is also very important one, and I was inspired to include this in my recommendations. Basically, one of the guest speakers at the annual conference of Massachusetts Association of Crime Analysts, Professor Eric Pisa from Northeastern University School of Criminology and Criminal Justice, said that police science research should be conducted by law enforcement with the aim of assessing the use of conflict methods in law enforcement trainings. This way, law enforcement will be able to see with their own lenses, this is from my personal perspective, the applicability of the conflict concept in law enforcement trainings. Because as the professor mentioned during the conference, and I fully agree with that, I and a bunch of other students, practitioners in the field, the academia can conduct endless research about what should be done differently by the police in the society. But sometimes, oftentimes, and most importantly, research should come within law enforcement themselves. They're the ones that should see, are these concepts that Kristina is talking about useful? Are they applicable in the curriculums and trainings that we use? If so, let's see how can we assess them and evaluate them and just do a pilot testing of how these things basically work. So that's pretty much my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Kristina. Very interesting. Thank you very much for this presentation and sharing with us the results of your research, of course. It's very, very interesting. So I don't know if the attendees has question, but I'm the head of institution in EFI. So when we are speaking about training, education, courses, and so on, I'm very, very interested. So what I would like to know, if possible, is what's the balance between practice and theory in the volumes of the rock you have explained and you have talked about in this presentation. Do you have an idea of this balance? So
yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Andreas. I can just share this from my personal perspective based on what I have had the opportunity to observe and read about. I know recruit police officers in the police entry-level academy of the municipal police departments in Massachusetts. They undergo intense physical trainings, but just like you said, there is a balance between the physical training component and the theoretical training component. As I mentioned, for example, Volume 1, policing in Massachusetts, they learn about the theoretical perspectives at the very inception of the program. And I think the way it is balanced with the other volumes, as far as I could see, there is a component of physical training throughout the 6 months that they're in the academy, but there is also a theoretical perspective. Like, for example, the volumes I was observing, for instance, the use of pepper spray and baton. Early morning, they would go through theoretical component, like the instructor would talk about the use of baton and pepper spray and provide some theoretical background through means of presentation. And then they would go to a certain facility within the physical facilities of the police academy, and they start practicing the use of pepper spray, the use of baton. For example, I have had the chance to observe the different handcuffing techniques that they learn about, but the different handcuffing techniques that they practice, and also the use of baton. As far as I know, and this is information that's publicly available as well, you can look into the LinkedIn profile of the MPTC, and it's available in their student course curriculum. The police officers to be are basically the ones who are sprayed with the pepper spray, which can be quite painful, I would assume. But I think that is conducted from the perspective of they just really have to sense how it feels when they spray an individual with a pepper spray to de-escalate a situation that can easily reach a stage of uh, peak of escalation, and unfortunately other types of use of force have to be used. So as far as I could observe and see, there is a balance within physical trainings, theoretical components, and practical components. The final stages, like for example, the motor vehicle investigations and the subtopics, I'm pretty sure it's divided in several stages. I observed one day of their training. They're having like multiple scenarios where they practice how they conduct a motor vehicle stop. Something else that I would like to share, and you can definitely read a little bit more about this. The state of Massachusetts, a couple of years ago, prohibited, I'm not entirely sure when exactly, prohibited motor vehicle pursuits. Like in the motor vehicle pursuit is to be conducted, I think, by municipal police officers only if the situation is escalated and it very much requires that a motor vehicle pursuit is conducted, because there might be implications on the safety of other individuals involved in traffic, and this is not something that is typically done in the state, as far as I could read, and as far as some of the instructors informed me about during the observations.
Thank you,
Does
Christina.
that
Thank you
answer your
very
question?
much. Good. I think we are not seeing written in Q&A section the other questions. So thank you very much again. In any case, we are recording this presentation, so there will be the opportunity for everybody to have a look and to have more information also after this meet the experts about this point. And of course, I think in case they can contact you directly for more information and so on. So thank you from the European Forensic Institute, from the EACA, and thank you again, Christina, for your time and for your nice presentation.
Thank you for
Bye. Have a
having me.
nice day. Have a nice evening. Bye bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.